"Arrest my mother? She's a thief." My daughter Emma screamed these words in front of all the neighbors, pointing at me as if I were a criminal. In that moment, my world fell apart. I never imagined that the little girl I'd carried in my arms for 9 months would be capable of destroying me like this. But what she didn't know was that my grandson Tyler was hiding a secret that would change everything. But for you to clearly understand how it all happened, I need to go back to the beginning of this story. My father had just passed away after 5 years of severe dementia. Those 5 years consumed me completely, transforming me into someone I no longer recognized in the mirror. I cared for him alone in our home in Nashville, Tennessee, changing his adult diapers at 3 in the morning, bathing him while he screamed without recognizing me, losing countless nights of sleep, listening to him call for my mother, who had been gone for decades. No one in the family showed up to help. My 2 brothers lived far away and had too many busy lives to care. And Emma, my only daughter, who lived just 20 minutes away, never showed up. Not even for a weekend visit. Not even at Christmas. Her excuses were always the same. "Mom, Tyler has soccer. Mom, I'm too busy at work. Mom, I can't see Grandpa like that. It hurts so much." But who do you think could handle the pain every day? Me. At the funeral, on a freezing January morning, she finally appeared, dressed in impeccable black, with perfect makeup, holding Tyler's hand. But she barely looked me in the eye. She stood on the other side of Woodlawn Memorial Cemetery, chatting with distant relatives who also never helped. I stood alone beside my father's casket, heartbroken. We buried Dad at 10 How that morning. The earth fell onto the coffin with a hollow sound that echoed in my empty chest. He was all I had left that was real in this world. My husband had left me 15 years ago, my brothers were strangers, and Emma had become someone I no longer knew. I returned to an empty house that afternoon. The house where I'd cared for Dad, where his room still smelled of medicine and old age. I sat in his armchair and cried until I had no more tears. My routine without him made no sense. Waking up, working as a high school English teacher, returning home. To what? To whom? I was 52 and felt 80, exhausted, broken, alone, and I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. 3 months had passed since the funeral. 3 months of living on autopilot, trying to rebuild some semblance of normalcy in my life. I had returned to work at Martin Luther King Jr. High School, where I had taught English for 20 years. My students were my only source of joy in those dark days. It was an ordinary Tuesday in April. I was at the Safeway supermarket on West End Avenue, pushing my cart down the cleaning supplies aisle, when my cell phone rang. The name Emma flashed across the screen. My heart gave a small leap of hope. She rarely called me. Maybe she finally wanted to talk, reconnect, heal the wounds. I answered with a cautious smile. "Hi, daughter." "You're a thief." Her voice boomed through the phone so loudly that I dropped the bottle of detergent I was holding. "The police are at your door right now. You stole $200,000 from Grandpa." My blood ran cold. "What? Emma, what are you talking about? Don't pretend you don't know." She screamed hysterically. "The lawyer found out everything. You embezzled his money before he died. I always knew you could do this." I dropped the cart in the middle of the aisle and ran to the parking lot, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. $200,000? The police? This had to be a ridiculous mistake, a terrible mess I could fix in minutes. I drove the 12 blocks to my house in the Sylvan Park neighborhood in record time, running yellow lights and nearly hitting a cyclist. When I turned onto my street, Natchez Trace, what I saw made me slam on the brakes so hard I left tire tracks on the asphalt. 2 Nashville police cruisers were parked in front of my house, blue and red lights flashing, and in the middle of my front yard, surrounded by at least 15 curious neighbors, stood Emma, my daughter, my own blood. She was red-faced with anger, her blonde hair disheveled, pointing at me as I staggered out of the car. "There she is!" Emma screamed like a madwoman. "Arrest my mother! She's a thief! She stole from my grandfather when he was dying!" The world around me seemed to slow down. I saw Mrs. Patterson, my 70-year-old neighbor with whom I had tea on Sundays, clap her hand over her mouth in horror. I saw Mr. Chen, who always greeted me when I went for a run, shake his head in disappointment. I saw the teenagers next door filming everything with their cell phones, and I saw 2 police officers walking towards me. "Emma!" I screamed, my voice hoarse and desperate. "What are you doing? What madness is this?" She marched toward me with furious strides, and for a second I thought she was going to hit me. Her face was contorted into a mask of hatred I'd never seen before. This wasn't my daughter. She couldn't be. "How dare you make a fool of me?" she screamed, inches from my face. I could feel her saliva splattering on me. 5 years you cared for him. 5 years you had full access to his accounts, and I, you idiot, thought you were being a good daughter. "Emma, I don't know what you're talking about." I tried to touch her arm, but she pushed me away hard. "Don't touch me!" She opened a leather briefcase she was carrying and started throwing papers in my face. Bank statements flew like confetti in the wind. "The proof is here!" $200,000 transferred from Grandpa's account to yours in the last 6 months of his life. I picked up one of the papers from the floor with trembling hands. It was a bank statement from First Tennessee Bank. And there, in indelible black letters, were the transfers. $15,000 here, $22,000 there, $30,000, $18,000, all going from Dad's account to mine. My God. This has to be a mistake, I muttered, feeling my legs weaken. "I've never done these transfers, Emma. You have to believe me." "Believe you?" Her laugh was cruel, cutting. "You took advantage of a helpless man with dementia who didn't even know his own name anymore. You exploited him." The anger that had been dormant inside me finally exploded. Something snapped in my chest. "How dare you!" My scream was so loud that even the neighbors backed away. "How dare you accuse me after everything? I gave up my life for 5 years. 5 years, Emma. While you were living your perfect little life with your husband and son, I was changing your grandfather's diapers. I was being woken up in the middle of the night because he couldn't remember where I was. I was being cursed at, pushed, sometimes even attacked because he didn't recognize me. You got paid for this," Emma spat back. $200,000 apparently. "I didn't take that money." Tears of pure rage burned my eyes. Where were you when he had pneumonia and almost died? Where were you at Christmas when he cried for his dead mother? Where were you for his birthdays, his holidays, his middle-of-the-night emergencies? I was working. I have a family to support. "And I don't have a life?" I screamed. "I sacrificed everything. I stopped going out with friends, having relationships, living, everything to take care of Dad. And you never ever showed up, not a visit, not a phone call asking if I needed help. Because I didn't know you were stealing him." "Mrs. Morrison." The deep voice of one of the officers interrupted our pitched battle. He was tall, in his 40s, with tired eyes. "I'm Detective James Morris. You need to come with us to the police station to answer questions about charges of exploitation of a vulnerable adult and embezzlement." My world spun. Exploitation? Appropriation? I did nothing. "The evidence suggests otherwise, ma'am," he said in a neutral, professional voice. "You have the right to remain silent." "No," I screamed. "This is a mistake. Emma, for God's sake, you're my daughter. How could you do this to me?" She crossed her arms, and in that moment, I saw something in her eyes that chilled me to the core. It wasn't just anger. It was pleasure. She was enjoying this. "You deserve every second of what's coming to you, Mother," she said coldly. "Thief, profiteer, you've shamed our family." That's when I saw Tyler. My 10-year-old grandson was sitting in the back seat of Emma's car, his face pressed against the window, tears streaming down his face. He was banging on the glass, yelling something I couldn't hear. "Tyler!" I tried to run to him, but Detective Morris held me back. "Mrs. Morrison, don't make things difficult." I felt the cold metal of the handcuffs on my wrists. Click, click. The sound echoed through the quiet street. All the neighbors looked at me as if I were a monster. Mrs. Patterson shook her head and went inside. Mr. Chen turned away. As they led me to the police car, I passed Emma. She didn't look away. She just stared at me with that icy hatred. And I, for the first time in my life, truly hated my own daughter. Pure, deep, burning hatred. That ungrateful woman, that ungrateful wretch I carried in my womb, whom I raised alone when her father abandoned us, whom I clothed, fed, paid for college, helped with her wedding. And this was gratitude? Calling me a thief in front of the entire neighborhood? Turning me into the police? I sat in the back of the police car, handcuffed like a common criminal. As we drove away, I looked out the window and saw Emma still standing in my yard, clutching those damned bank statements. And for the first time in my life, I wished I had never had a daughter. Nashville's Central Police Station smelled of stale coffee, sweat, and cheap disinfectant. They led me down a hallway with peeling hospital green walls, past cells where men screamed obscenities and women cried. My teacher's shoes, those comfortable loafers I wore for hours on end in class, made a pathetic sound against the dirty linoleum. Detective Morris led me to an interrogation room. 4 gray walls, a scratched metal table, 3 folding chairs that had seen better days, and a camera flashing red in the corner. It looked exactly like a crime scene on television, except the smell of fear was real. And that smell was coming from me. "Sit down, Mrs. Morrison," Morris said, not cruelly, but not kindly either. Just tired. Like someone who'd seen this story 1,000 times before. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull out my chair. The handcuffs had left red marks on my wrists. Morris sat down across from me and opened a thick folder stuffed with documents. "Mrs. Morrison," he began, adjusting his reading glasses. "You are charged with exploitation of a vulnerable adult under Tennessee Code 71-6-119 and larceny. These are serious charges that can result in up to 20 years in prison." 20 years. The words fell on me like molten lead. I would be 72 when I got out. If I even got out alive. "I didn't do anything," I whispered, my voice cracking. "There has to be a mistake. A $200,000 error?" He raised an eyebrow and began spreading documents across the table. Bank statements. Dozens of them. "Let's see, Mrs. Morrison. On August 15th of last year, a $15,000 transfer went from Mr. Robert Chen's, your father's, checking account to your personal account at the same bank. 2 days later, another $12,000. In September, $22,000 in a single transfer." My stomach churned. I stared at those numbers, those dates, and they were real as the ground beneath my feet. "In October," Morris continued in a monotone, turning pages, "there was $18,000 on the 3rd, $25,000 on the 17th, and another $15,000 on the 29th. November had the largest transfer, $35,000 on the 12th. December had 3 transfers, $14,000, $19,000, and $21,000. And in January, 2 weeks before your father died, a final transfer of $24,000. He stopped and looked me straight in the eye. "That totals $20,000 to be exact, all authorized by your online access to his account, all transferred to your personal account, and all during the period when your father was in the advanced stages of dementia and lacked the mental capacity to authorize such transactions." I didn't do it," I repeated, but my voice sounded weaker this time, less convincing, even to my own ears. Morris leaned forward. "Mrs. Morrison, your father appointed you as his power of attorney in 2019 when he was diagnosed with dementia. This gave you legal access to his accounts. Access to pay bills, manage his finances, and take care of his medical needs, not to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars into your own account. But I didn't transfer it." My voice rose in despair. "I used his account only to pay for the electricity, water, medicine, the physical therapist, the nurse who came 3 times a week. I never, ever touched his money for myself. So how do you explain these transfers?" He pushed the statements closer to me. "They have your digital signature, your login, your IP address, your home address. They were all made from your personal computer, Ms. Morrison. I took the papers with trembling hands, and there they were, black on white. My username, Smorrison 2024. Transfers approved, processed, completed. My God, it was true. I didn't do it, I muttered again, but the conviction was evaporating. I don't remember doing it. And that's when doubt began to creep in like poison. Wait, did I do it? I broke out in a cold sweat. My hands felt cold despite the stifling heat of the room. I had access to Dad's account. I had the login and password written down in a notebook in the kitchen drawer. I paid his bills every month. I transferred money from savings to checking when needed. I scheduled automatic payments. And I was so exhausted in those months. I closed my eyes and saw myself in that hellish time. Waking up at 3 a.m. because Dad was screaming, confused, trying to leave the house in his pajamas in the middle of winter, rushing to the hospital when he had pneumonia, missing work to take him to doctor's appointments, coming home at 7 p.m. after a full day of classes to find him covered in urine because the nurse was absent. I slept 3, maybe 4 hours a night. I lived on coffee and pure adrenaline. My memory of that period was fragmented, hazy, like trying to recall a bad dream. And I paid so many bills, so many. The American healthcare system is a cruel joke. Medicare covered only a fraction of the costs. I paid out of pocket for the extra nurse, the medications not covered by insurance, the physical therapist, the imported adult diapers that were better for his sensitive skin, the special food. Could it be that, in a moment of extreme exhaustion, of confusion, I transferred money to my account, thinking I was paying some bill? Mrs. Morrison? Morris's voice brought me back. Are you okay? I swallowed. My throat was as dry as sandpaper. I was very tired during that time, very confused. Is it possible I did something without realizing it? I saw a gleam in Morris's eyes. This was what he wanted to hear. A confession disguised as doubt. So you admit that you may have made the transfers? No! I screamed, slamming my hands on the table. No, I'm not admitting it. I'm saying I don't remember, that I was exhausted, but I would never knowingly steal from my own father. Elderly exploitation is rarely conscious at first, Morris said, his voice almost gentle now. The voice of someone trying to get you to confess. It starts small. Oh, I'll just borrow a little, then I'll give it back. Or, I'm spending so much caring for him. I deserve compensation. It's a gradual slide, Mrs. Morrison. I understand. Caring for a relative with dementia is one of the hardest jobs in the world. I didn't do it, I repeated, but my voice was hollow now. Because the terrifying truth was, I wasn't entirely sure. I remembered sitting at the computer at night, bone-tired, paying bills while Dad slept. Click, 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 transfer, pay, schedule. It all became mechanical after a while. What if one of those nights, half asleep, I typed in my account number instead of the medical provider's? What if I did it multiple times without realizing it? But $220,000, I said aloud, trying to convince myself. How could I transfer that much money without realizing it? You tell me, Mrs. Morrison. I looked at my bank statements, which he also had there. My account had received that money, yes. But where was it? I looked at the debts, mortgage payments, electricity and water bills, grocery, gas, medical copays, nothing extravagant, no expensive trips, no jewelry, no new cars. If I stole the money, he said slowly, where is it? There's nothing unusual about my spending. I'm living the same way I did before. Morris shuffled through more papers. That's interesting, actually. The money came into your account and was gradually spent on everyday expenses over the months. Basically, you doubled your spending pattern. You bought more from Amazon, ordered more food delivery, shopped at Target more, and paid off credit card bills that had piled up. Was it true? I'd been so overwhelmed that I started ordering more takeout because I didn't have time to cook. I bought a new mattress last year because my back was wrecked from taking care of Dad. I paid off that credit card with high interest rates. Oh my God, what if I really did this? I'm 52, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Am I losing my memory? Has the stress made me sick? The room began to spin. I gripped the edge of the table. I thought of Emma, the absolute fury on her face, the disgust. Had she been right? Had I really taken advantage of Dad and was now blocking out the memory because I couldn't accept what I'd done? I need a lawyer, I managed to say. That's your right, Morris agreed. But before we call one, I want you to know that cooperation can mean a much lighter sentence. If you confess, show remorse, and offer to return the money, the judge will be more lenient. Confessing something I didn't remember doing, or that I perhaps did without realizing it, or that I definitely didn't do but couldn't prove. I need to think, I muttered. Morris waved and left the room, leaving me alone with those damn bank statements spread across the table. $15,000, $22,000, $35,000. Numbers that made no sense, but also made all the sense in the world. 2 hours later, after processing my criminal record, they took mugshots, front and side mugshots, making me feel like a real criminal, took my fingerprints, black ink that wouldn't come off completely from my fingernails, and took me to a temporary holding cell. The cell was small and cold, with a concrete bench and a metal toilet without a seat. It smelled of urine and despair. A woman in the corner was huddled, rocking back and forth, mumbling something unintelligible. I sat on the cold bench and leaned my head against the damp wall, and for the first time, I allowed myself to consider the terrible, devastating possibility. What if I really did? What if I was so exhausted, so broken, so resentful about having to take care of Dad alone while Emma lived her perfect life, that I unconsciously started compensating? What if my brain blocked out these memories because they were too shameful to accept? The tears finally came. Silent, hot, desperate. And in the cold darkness of that cell, surrounded by criminals and the echo of slamming metal doors, doubt consumed me completely. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe I really was a thief. I spent the night in the detention cell, huddled on that concrete bench that seemed to suck all the heat from my body. I didn't sleep. Not a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's face contorted in hatred, heard her voice shouting, "Thief!" in front of all the neighbors, felt the cold metal of the handcuffs on my wrists. In the morning, they took me to the jail cafeteria. A plastic tray of watery eggs, toast as hard as cardboard, and coffee that tasted like ash. I couldn't eat a thing. My stomach was so tight that anything would make me vomit. That's when the guard came to my desk. "Morrison, you have a visitor." My heart leaped. Carol? Had my friend found out where I was? Or maybe it was the public defender they'd said I was entitled to? I followed the guard through more cold, lifeless corridors to the visiting room. It was a space divided in half by thick, fogged-up glass partitions with old-fashioned black telephones on either side, just like in the movies, except the smell of disinfectant and fear was all too real. And then I saw her. Emma. My daughter sat on the other side of the glass, arms crossed, face set like stone. But it wasn't the same explosive anger as yesterday. It was something worse. It was disgust. Cold, calculated revulsion. I sat on the wobbly-legged plastic chair and picked up the phone with a shaky hand. She took hers, but it took a few seconds, as if touching something I'd touched had contaminated her. "Emma," my voice cracked. "Daughter, please, you need to listen to me." "Don't call me daughter." His voice was pure ice through the line. "You've lost that right." The words hit me like a slap. "Emma, I didn't do what you think. I know it sounds bad, but there has to be an explanation." "Explanation?" She laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. What possible explanation could there be for stealing $200,000 from a helpless man with dementia? Your own father? "I didn't steal." My tears began to fall. "I swear, Emma, I don't remember making those transfers. I was so tired, so overwhelmed." "Oh, so now you were tired?" She leaned forward, and I could see the veins in her neck standing out. How convenient. too tired to remember stealing a fortune, but not too tired to spend the money, right? I didn't know that money was there. I kept living off my salary. Lies! She slammed her free hand on the glass partition, making a sound that echoed in the room. 2 guards glanced our way. The lawyer showed us everything, Mom. Your bank statements. Your purchases. You spent Grandpa's money on yourself while pretending to be the holy martyr who took care of him alone. I was the only one who took care of him, I yelled back, no longer caring who was listening. Where were you, Emma? Where were you when he needed to be fed through a tube? When he didn't recognize anyone anymore? When he woke up at 3 a.m. screaming in terror? I was taking care of my family, she screamed. I had a job, a child, a life. You chose to take care of him. No one forced you. He was my father, and you took advantage of him. Emma was shaking now, tears of rage in her eyes. You're a monster, Mother. You saw a vulnerable, defenseless old man and exploited him. You drained him dry and then had the audacity to make a fool of yourself at his funeral. Each word was a knife in my chest. Emma, please. I'm your mother. You were my mother. His voice was deathly calm now, which was somehow worse than the screaming. The woman I knew would never do such a thing, so either you were always a liar, or I never really knew you. Daughter, no. I was sobbing now, barely able to hold the phone. And Tyler. She said my grandson's name like a final sentence. Tyler will never see you again. Never again. My world stopped. No, Emma, don't do this. He has nothing to do with this. He has everything to do with it, she screamed. You think I'm going to let my son be around a criminal? Someone who steals from sick elderly people? What kind of mother would I be? I'm not a criminal. I slammed my hand on the glass. Emma, please. Tyler is everything to me. You can't take him away from me. I can and I will. She was crying now, too, but they were tears of anger, not sadness. He asked about you last night. He cried all night. And you know what I told him? That Grandma did some really bad things. That Grandma hurt Great-Grandpa. That Grandma will be gone for a long, long time. No. My voice was barely a whisper now. Don't do this to him. To us. There are no more people, Mom. Emma stood, still holding the phone. When you leave here, if you leave, don't try to contact me. Don't try to see Tyler. We've already changed the locks on your house. Your things are boxed up in the garage. You don't have any family anymore. Emma, no! I screamed so loudly that the guard started walking toward me. Please don't do this! But she had already hung up the phone. I could see her mouth moving through the glass, forming words I couldn't hear but could read on her lips. You are a monster. And then she turned and walked away. Just walked away. She left me there, banging on the window, screaming her name, begging her to come back. The guards dragged me back to the cell. I was so hysterical, they threatened to put me in solitary confinement. I just nodded that I would calm down, that I would be good, anything to avoid being alone in that even smaller hole. Back in the cell, I collapsed onto the concrete bench and finally grasped the full extent of the abyss before me. My job. My 20-year job at Martin Luther King Jr. High School. They should know by now. Teacher arrested for stealing from elderly man with dementia. It would be all over the local news. Dishonest educator exploits her own sick father. They would fire me. Of course they would. Teachers need to have clean records. I would never be able to work with children again. My reputation. 20 years of building respect in the community, being known as the dedicated teacher, the caring daughter who dropped everything to care for her father. Destroyed in one day. The neighbors already saw me as a criminal. Mrs. Patterson, with whom I had tea. Mr. Chen, who helped me with the garden. Everyone turned their backs yesterday. Everyone believed it. My house. Emma said they changed the locks. My own house where I lived for 15 years. Tyler's pictures on the fridge, the books I collected, the plants I tended, Dad's garden that I kept alive even after he died, everything boxed up, thrown away, as if I'd never existed. And Tyler, my grandson, my reason to smile on the hardest mornings, The boy who called me every week to tell me about school, the soccer team, his new friend. Who sent me drawings in the mail, who hugged me so tightly I felt my heart rebuild. Never again. Emma would poison him against me. Grandma did bad things. How would a 10-year-old process that? He loved me, but he also loved his mother. And if she kept repeating that I was bad, that I hurt his great-grandfather, eventually he would believe it. Eventually he would hate me too. I curled up in a fetal position on that cold bench, hugging my knees to my chest. The charge was exploitation of a vulnerable adult under Tennessee code. I had researched this years ago, when I first started caring for Dad, precisely to know how to protect him. The maximum penalty was 20 years in prison. 20 years. I was 52. If I were sentenced to the maximum, I would be 72. An old woman. Broke. No family, no career, no nothing. What if I couldn't prove my innocence? What if I didn't remember making the transfers because I actually did? What if my own brain was betraying me, blocking out shameful memories? Terror washed over me like a black, suffocating wave. I began to shake uncontrollably. My teeth were chattering. I couldn't breathe properly. No air could reach my lungs. I was having a panic attack right there in that filthy cell. "Help!" I tried to shout, but it came out as a hoarse whisper. "Someone! Please!" Nobody came. The hours dragged by. More prisoners were brought in and out. A woman vomited in the corner. Another screamed for drugs until she was hoarse. The guards passed by, indifferent to everything. And I stood there, cowering, realizing a terrifying truth. My life was over. Even if I were released tomorrow, even if by some miracle the charges were dropped, nothing would be the same. Emma would never forgive me. Tyler would grow up hating me. The neighbors would always whisper as I passed. "That's the woman who stole from her sick father." And the worst part, the part that destroyed me inside like acid, I wasn't absolutely sure I was innocent. This doubt, this poison, was killing me more than any cell could. I closed my eyes and wished, for the first time in my life, that I simply wouldn't wake up the next day. The fear was not just of prison. It was that Emma was right. It was that I really was the monster she saw when she looked at me. On the third day in the detention cell, when I'd lost all sense of time or hope, a guard appeared at the bars. "Morrison, your bail has been posted. You're free to go." I lifted my head from the concrete bench, confused. Bail? $50,000? I didn't have that kind of money. Emma certainly wouldn't pay. My brothers barely spoke to me. Who? They took me back to process my departure. They returned my belongings in a plastic bag, my wallet, my keys, which no longer fit in my own house, my dead cell phone, and the wedding ring I still wore even after 15 years of divorce. And then I saw her. Carol. Carol Jennings, my best friend of 30 years, stood in the police station lobby wearing the green wool cardigan I'd given her last Christmas. Her gray hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her reading glasses hung on a chain around her neck, and she had dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept in days. When our eyes met, she opened her arms. I ran. God, how I ran. I ran through that filthy reception area and threw myself into her arms, sobbing so hard my whole body convulsed. "I got you, honey," Carol whispered in my ear, squeezing me tightly. "I got you. You're safe now." "Carol, how did you—" "Bail was $50,000. She brushed my dirty, tangled hair out of my face. "Let's get out of here first. We'll talk later." She led me out of the police station into daylight that seemed absurdly bright after 3 days under fluorescent lights. The Nashville air, even polluted by city traffic, felt like the sweetest I'd ever breathed. Carol led me to an old Honda Civic that wasn't hers. "Where's your car?" I asked, confused. "Later, Sarah," she said gently, opening the passenger door. "Get in." "Let's go home." "My house," I began, and then I remembered. Emma had changed the locks. "I don't have a house anymore." "You have mine," Carol said firmly, "and you'll stay with me for as long as you need me." Carol's home was in East Nashville, a bohemian neighborhood filled with colorful Victorian homes and gardens filled with native plants. She lived in a 2-story yellow house with a wide porch and a garden that always smelled of lavender. When we walked in, I nearly broke down again. Everything was so normal, so safe. The living room with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the blue velvet sofa where we spent countless nights drinking wine and grading papers, the small but cozy kitchen where we'd cooked so many dinners together. "Go take a shower," Carol instructed gently. "I left clean towels and my clothes in the bathroom. They're too big for you, but they'll do for now. Then I'll make some tea and we can talk." The hot shower was the closest thing I've ever had to a religious experience. I stood in the shower for 40 minutes, washing away the smell of prison, fear, and despair. The water ran brown at first, washing away days of filth and humiliation. When I finally got out, I pulled on the sweatpants and oversized t-shirt Carol had left and looked at myself in the foggy mirror. I didn't recognize myself. The woman in the reflection had sunken, haunted eyes. Hair that used to be shiny brown now looked lifeless. Expression lines that hadn't been there a week ago. I had aged 10 years in 3 days. I walked downstairs barefoot, following the scent of chamomile and honey. Carol was in the kitchen, making tea in an antique porcelain kettle. "Sit down," she said, pointing to the round wooden table. I sat down, and she placed a steaming mug in front of me, along with a plate of toast with butter and jam. "Come, your skin and bones." "Carol," my voice was shaky, "how did you post $50,000 in bail?" She sighed and sat across from me, holding her own mug. "I sold my car." "You... what?" I looked at her in horror. "Carol, no, that Subaru was..." "A car," she interrupted calmly. "Just a car, Sarah. I can take the bus. Nashville has decent public transportation. You, on the other hand, were in a jail cell for a crime I know you didn't commit." The tears came back, hot and fast. "How can you be so sure?" Carol took my hand across the table. Her hands were warm, calloused from years of holding chalk and pens. A teacher's hands, like mine. "Sarah Morrison, I've known you for 30 years, she said, looking straight into my eyes. "We met on our first day as substitute teachers at that awful school in West Nashville, remember? You were so nervous you spilled coffee on your shirt, and I lent you my cardigan." I laughed through my tears. "And you had that stained shirt all day." "Exactly." She squeezed my hand. 30 years, Sarah. I watched you work 2 jobs to pay for Emma's college education alone. I watched you stay up nights caring for her when she contracted pneumonia at age 7. I watched you turn down a promotion that would have required moving because you didn't want to take Emma out of school. I watched you care for your father with a dedication that bordered on self-sacrifice. "Carol, let me finish." His voice grew firmer. "I saw who you are, Sarah. You're the woman who brings groceries to Mrs. Patterson when she's sick, who works overtime without pay helping struggling students, who's donated blood 47 times. Yes, I know the number because you have that ridiculous bumper sticker on your car. You're incapable of stealing from anyone, let alone your own father." I sobbed, covering my face with my hands. "But the evidence..." "Carol, the transfers are real, and I don't remember doing them. What if I really did it without realizing it? What if Emma is right? Emma is wrong." Carol said it with such conviction that I looked up. "And we're going to prove it." "What? I don't have money for a decent lawyer? The public defender barely looked at my case." "I took care of that, too." I looked at her confused. "What?" Carol stood up and went to her purse on the counter. She took out a business card and placed it in front of me. "Helen Marks, criminal lawyer, specializing in financial fraud and white-collar defense." "I don't understand," I muttered, looking at the card. "Helen Marks is the best criminal lawyer in Nashville," Carol explained. "She has 25 years of experience, has won 87% of her cases, and is absolutely fierce in court. I contacted her the day you were arrested." "Carol, a lawyer like that must cost a fortune." $35,000 down payment, Carol said calmly, plus investigation costs, forensics, possible expert witnesses. My stomach dropped. "Carol, no. You can't..." "I already did." She sat back down. Sarah, I have savings. I was saving for that trip to Italy I've always dreamed of, but you know what I realized? Italy will always be there. You, on the other hand, need help now. But that's all you have. Your retirement, your dreams. My dreams are worthless if my best friend goes to prison for 20 years for a crime she didn't commit. Carol slammed her hand on the table, making the mugs clink. Then her voice softened. Sarah, you would have done the same for me. You would do the same for me. So let me do this for you. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I burst into tears right there at her kitchen table. 30 years of friendship, of being seen, of being known, of being loved unconditionally. It all came flooding back. Thank you, I managed to whisper between sobs. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Carol stood up and hugged me from behind, resting her chin on the top of my head. We'll work this out, honey, I promise. The truth will come out. That night, Helen Marks came to Carol's house. She looked exactly how I'd imagine a top-tier criminal defense attorney. In her early 50s, with dark hair slicked back in a sleek bun, a crisp gray suit, and sharp eyes that seemed to see through lies. We sat in the living room, and she opened a thick folder of documents. Mrs. Morrison, she began, her voice professional but not cold. Carol has told me her side of the story. Now I need to hear it from you. And I need you to be completely honest with me. I can't adequately defend you if you hide anything from me. Understand? Yes, I whispered. Did you make these transfers? I took a deep breath. I don't remember doing it, but I have access to my dad's account, and I was very exhausted during that time, so I can't say with absolute certainty that I didn't do it. Helen nodded, writing it down. Honesty. Good. Now tell me, did you have a motive for stealing from your father? Debt, addiction, serious financial problems? No. My teaching salary covers my expenses. I don't have significant credit card debt. I don't have addictions. I don't gamble. Have you increased your standard of living in the last 6 months? Extravagant purchases, travel, jewelry? No. I continued living exactly as before. Helen took more notes. Interesting. Typically, in elder abuse cases, we see a clear change in the abuser's lifestyle. New cars, houses, expensive vacations. She looked at me directly. The money went into your account. Where did it go? I don't know. I spent it on normal things, I guess. Groceries, bills, gas. We'll find out exactly where every penny went, Helen said. I'll hire a forensic accountant. They'll track every transaction in your accounts for the past 12 months. If you're telling the truth, the numbers will show it. What if they show that I spent the money? I asked, afraid of the answer. Then let's find out how and why, Helen replied. Sarah, can I call you Sarah? I nodded. Sarah, in 30 years of doing this, I've developed an instinct for when someone is lying. You're not lying. You genuinely don't know what happened, which tells me there's something more here, something we're not seeing yet. Like what? I don't know yet, but we'll find out. She closed the folder. I want you to write down everything you remember about your father's last 6 months, every detail. Who visited him? Who had access to the house? Who knew the passwords to the accounts? Everything. His lawyer, Marcus Webb, visited monthly, I recalled, to update the will and take care of legal matters. Helen raised an eyebrow. Interesting. A lawyer with regular access to a vulnerable client with dementia. I'll look into Mr. Webb. For the first time in days, I felt something other than despair, hope. A tiny, fragile, but real spark. Do you really think you can prove I'm innocent? I asked, my voice breaking. Helen looked at me with those sharp eyes, and for a second, I saw something softer there. Compassion, maybe. Sarah, I don't take cases I don't believe I can win, she said. And I took yours, so yes, we will find out the truth. And when we do, we will clear your name and make whoever really did this pay. Carol took my hand. See? I told you, you're not alone. That night, lying in Carol's guest room on a bed with lavender-scented sheets, staring up at the whitewashed ceiling, I took my first deep breath in days. Someone believed in me. Someone was fighting for me. I had a chance. And as scary as the future still seemed, as much as Emma hated me and Tyler was far away, as much as my life was destroyed, there was hope. And sometimes, hope is all we need to survive another day. 2 weeks later, Helen called me, asking me to come to her office urgently. I found something, was all she said, but her tone indicated it was important. Helen Marks's office was on the 23rd floor of a mirrored glass building in downtown Nashville, overlooking the Cumberland River. The reception area was all grays and whites, with modern art on the walls and a secretary who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Carol went with me, holding my hand in the elevator as I tried to control my anxiety. Helen greeted us personally. Something the secretary said was rare. She was wearing another impeccable suit, this time navy blue, but there was a different energy about her, an intensity that hadn't been there before. "Have a seat," she said, closing the glass door to the conference room. Spread out on the mahogany table were documents, printouts, colorful post-its, and markers. "What did you find out?" I asked, barely able to sit up. Helen pulled up a chair and leaned forward. "Sarah, did you know your father changed his will a week before he died?" My blood ran cold. "What? No, that can't be right. Dad was completely out of his mind the last week. He didn't even know who I was anymore." "Exactly." Helen pushed a document toward me. "This is your father's original will, dated March 2019, shortly after his dementia diagnosis. Do you remember when he made this?" I took the document with trembling hands. Yes, I remembered. Dad had taken me to the office of Marcus Webb, the family lawyer, for years. He was lucid that day, frightened by the diagnosis, wanting to get things in order. I read the terms. He left the house to be sold and the proceeds split between me and my 2 brothers. But the savings, about $400,000 in accounts and investments, were divided differently. 60% to me, 20% to each of my brothers. There was even an explanatory note that I didn't remember seeing before. "I leave the majority to my daughter Sarah Morrison in recognition and gratitude for the care I know she will give me in the difficult years ahead. Her siblings have their own lives and established families. Sarah deserves to be compensated for the sacrifice she will make for me." Tears blurred my vision. "Dad wrote this." "Yes." Helen pulled out another document. "Now look at this. This is the will that is registered as the final version, dated January 8th, exactly 7 days before your father passed away." I picked up the second document. It was almost identical, except for one crucial difference. The savings were split equally between my brothers and me. 3% each. The explanatory note had disappeared. "No," I whispered. "No, this can't be real. Dad wasn't lucid in January. He was dying, Helen. Double pneumonia, 24-hour oxygen, morphine for the pain. He didn't even know his own name." "I know." Helen crossed her arms. "And that's why I brought this." She pushed another document. "This is attorney Marcus Webb's affidavit, sworn that your father was surprisingly lucid on January 8th, that he clearly expressed his desire to treat all his children equally, and that he signed the new will in his own hand in full consciousness and mental capacity." I looked at the signature on the will. It was shaky, almost illegible, nothing like Dad's firm signature on the original will. "And there's more," Helen continued, anger rising in her voice. "There are also the statements of 2 witnesses who witnessed the signing. Do you know who they are?" I looked at the names. I didn't recognize any of them. "Janet Moore and David Collins," Helen said. "Both employees in Marcus Webb's office. Both testified that your father was lucid and conscious." "They lied," I whispered, feeling anger begin to boil inside me. "They know they lied. Dad was dying. Yes, they lied." Helen picked up another paper. "And here's the interesting part. I got your father's medical records from that day. Want to guess what they say?" "What?" "Patient in a semi-comatose state, responsive only to painful stimuli. Verbal communication impossible. Palliative care and comfort recommended. Helen tapped her finger on the paper. This was written by Dr. Patterson, your father's physician, at 9 a.m. on January 8th. The will was supposedly signed at 2 p.m. the same day. Anger exploded inside me like a volcano. I stood up so fast the chair fell backward. "That son of a bitch!" I screamed. "Marcus Webb forged my father's signature. He made the whole thing up." Carol stood up and tried to calm me down. "Sarah, no!" I backed away from her, pacing like a caged animal. That damn lawyer visited Dad every month for the last year. Every month he showed up at the house, staying alone with Dad for hours, taking care of legal matters. And I, like an idiot, trusted him. "Sarah, breathe." He manipulated my sick father. I punched the glass wall so hard my hand exploded in pain. Helen and Carol jumped. He saw a vulnerable man with dementia and exploited him. "Sarah, your hand!" Carol tried to grab my wrist, but I pulled away. "No, you don't understand." I was screaming now, tears of pure rage streaming down my face. Marcus Webb stole from my father, and then he framed me for the transfers. And Emma, God, Emma. The realization hit me like a train. "Emma knew," I whispered, looking at Helen in horror. She had to know. The will was changed to benefit her too. She got more in the new version. She was involved in this. Helen exchanged a look with Carol. "Sarah, we can't prove that Emma—" "She knew!" My scream echoed in the conference room. Why else would she accuse me so quickly? Why would she change the locks on my house? Why would she cut me off from Tyler? I started pacing again, my mind racing. She and Marcus planned it all. Change the will, make the fake transfers from Dad's account, frame me. "Sarah, we need proof. The evidence is here." I slammed my good hand on the table, sending the documents flying. Dad was semi-comatose, Helen. He couldn't have signed that will. Marcus forged it, and Emma knew. She had to know. Carol finally managed to grab me by the shoulders. "Sarah, look at me. Look at me." I looked at her, shaking with rage. "You're right to be furious," Carol said calmly. "But you need to control yourself. Helen needs you to be clear-headed to build her case. Punching walls isn't helping anyone." "But she's my daughter!" I collapsed into Carol's arms, sobbing. How could my own daughter do this to me? How could she betray me like this? Helen leaned closer, her voice softer now. "Sarah, I understand your anger, and you have every right to be furious. But here's what we're going to do. I've already hired a document analysis expert to examine this signature. I'm also requesting Marcus Webb's phone and financial records. If Emma was involved, we'll find out." "And when we find out?" I asked, lifting my tear-soaked face. "What happens to her?" "If we prove conspiracy to defraud and false accusation," Helen said carefully, "Emma could face criminal charges as well. The thought of my daughter being arrested should horrify me. It should make me step back, protect her, be the mother I've always been." But all I felt was grim satisfaction. "Good," I said in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. "She deserves every second of it." Carol looked at me with concern. "Sarah, you're not thinking straight. I'm thinking perfectly." I pulled away from her again. "You know what Emma told me in prison? That I was a monster, that Tyler would never see me again, that I'd taken advantage of Dad." My voice went deadly calm. "She looked me in the eye and called me a monster, Carol, knowing that she and Marcus had set this all up. We still have no proof that Emma—" Helen began. "Then get the proof," I yelled. "You're the best lawyer in Nashville, aren't you? Then prove my daughter cheated on me. Prove she sold her own mother for money." The silence that followed was dense, suffocating. Helen finally nodded. "Okay, I'll investigate Emma too. But Sarah, I need you to understand. If we find out she was involved, there's no going back. You'll be destroying your relationship with your daughter forever." "She already did," he said bitterly. "When she yelled, 'Arrest my mother,' in front of the whole neighborhood, she destroyed me. When she visited me in prison just to spit venom, she destroyed me. When she took Tyler from me, she destroyed me. I grabbed my purse with the hand that wasn't throbbing with pain. Find out the truth, Helen. All of it. And when you find out Emma was involved, I want her to pay. I want her to feel every ounce of the pain she caused me. Sarah. Carol tried again. No, Carol. I looked at my best friend. You weren't there. You didn't see the hate in her eyes. You didn't hear the things she said. My daughter looked at me like I was trash. What if she did this, knowing she was innocent? I shook my head. Then she's not my daughter anymore. I left the conference room with Carol running after me. In the car, I finally let go of my hand. It was swelling, my fingers purple. I'd probably broken something when I punched that window. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the rage that consumed my chest. Marcus Webb had manipulated my dying father, and Emma, my daughter, my own flesh and blood, had helped him. Or worse, it had been her idea all along. I'm going to destroy them both, I muttered as Carol drove in silence. I swear to God, Carol. I'll make them pay for every tear, every night in jail, every second they made me doubt my own sanity. Carol didn't answer. She just drove, her hands tightly on the steering wheel. And for the first time in my life, I understood what true hate meant. Not fleeting anger, not momentary frustration, but visceral, deep hatred that burned like acid in his veins. And this hatred had two names, Marcus Webb and Emma Morrison. My daughter, my traitor. 3 weeks have passed since the discovery of the altered will. 3 weeks of investigations, expert reports, expensive lawyers, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was sitting in Carol's living room on a rainy May afternoon, watching the raindrops trickle down the window, when Helen called, asking for another meeting. This time, she came to Carol's house. Something about her tone made my stomach drop. Carol made coffee while Helen sat on the blue velvet sofa, looking for the first time since I'd met her, tired, defeated even. Sarah, she began, and I already knew the news wasn't good. We need to talk about the realities of your case. What happened? I asked, my voice small. Helen opened her briefcase, the same briefcase she'd seen dozens of times, each time growing fatter with useless documents. The document analysis expert examined the signature on the will. He can't definitively prove it's a forgery. I felt the ground crumble beneath my feet. What do you mean you can't prove it? Did you see how different that signature is? It's different, yes, Helen interrupted, but not enough to be considered conclusive evidence in court. The signature is shaky, but it could be attributed to your father's deteriorating medical condition. People with advanced dementia can have moments of relative lucidity. It's rare, but it does happen. But the medical records say he was semi-comatose. Dr. Patterson wrote this at 9 a.m., Helen said carefully. Marcus Webb is arguing that his father had a lucid period in the afternoon when the will was supposedly signed, and he has 2 doctors willing to testify that this is possible. What 2 doctors? Carol asked, placing the coffee cups on the coffee table. Dr. Richard Moss and Dr. Jennifer Chang, Helen replied, both experts in dementia and geriatric care, both with impeccable credentials, both willing to testify that dementia patients can have windows of lucidity even in advanced stages. But they never examined my father, I shouted. They didn't even know him. They don't need to have examined him specifically, Helen said regretfully. They'll testify about his general condition. And Marcus has the statements from the 2 witnesses in his office confirming that your father was conscious. Witnesses who work for him, who lie for him, who are respectable employees with no criminal records, Helen corrected gently. Sarah, I know it's unfair, but in a court of law, the word of 3 people, Marcus and his 2 witnesses, against just you, a daughter accused of stealing from her father, the judge might not believe us. I stood up and began pacing the room, my hand still bandaged from the last time I lost control. What about Marcus? Have you looked into his financial records? Yes, 40 years of impeccable practice. No complaints to the Bar Association, no apparent financial irregularities. His reputation is... Helen paused, Rock solid. Then he's just a very good forger, I muttered bitterly. Sarah, sit down. I need to show you something. Helen pulled out a spreadsheet. This is a summary of all the costs so far. I looked at the numbers and my stomach turned. Helen's fees, $35,000 forensic accountant, $8,500 document review. Specialist, $6,200 private investigator, $4,800 miscellaneous court fees, $2,100 total, $56,600. My God, I whispered. Carol. I looked at my friend, who was sitting in the armchair with her eyes downcast. She seemed to have aged 10 years in those weeks. Her hair was grayer, the circles under her eyes were deeper, her shoulders slumped. Carol sold the car and spent all her savings, I continued, my voice breaking. And we still have nothing, no concrete proof. We have the inconsistencies in the will, Helen tried. We have the medical records that contradict. But it's not enough, is it? I interrupted her. You're saying it yourself that it's not enough. Helen sighed. Sarah, in cases like this, the prosecution has the upper hand. They have the clearly documented bank transfers. They have access to your father's account. They have the money flowing into your account. And now, with the will changed, they can argue that you were furious about losing part of the inheritance and so stole the money while you could. But I didn't know about the changed will until now. They'll say Marcus informed you, that you found out and freaked out. Helen leaned forward. Sarah, I have to be honest with you. The chances of us winning this case are not good. The silence in the room was deafening. All that could be heard was the rain tapping on the window and the ticking of the wall clock. How much time would I get? I asked finally. If we go to trial and lose? First-degree exploitation of a vulnerable adult, embezzlement of over $100,000. Helen paused. Between 12 and 20 years, probably 15 with good behavior. 15 years? I would be 67 when I left. Tyler would be 25. He would be an adult who barely knew me. What if I accept a deal? My voice was barely a whisper now. Sarah, no, Carol began. The prosecution offered 6 years in exchange for a plea and full restitution, Helen said carefully. With good behavior, you could get out in 4. 4 years was still an eternity, but it was better than 15. And I would have to confess to something I didn't do, he said bitterly. Yes. I got up and went to the window, looking out at the wet street. A group of children ran past under colorful umbrellas, laughing. Normal life, something I no longer had. Do you know what happened yesterday? I said, without turning around. I went to the supermarket, just to buy milk and bread, because Carol shouldn't be spending money on me. And Mrs. Patterson was there, my neighbor of 15 years, the woman I brought soup to when I was sick. Sarah, Carol's voice was choked. She saw me in the dairy aisle, she looked right at me, and then she turned the cart and walked the other way. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass. She ran away from me, like I was contagious. People are cruel when they don't know the truth, Helen said. And last night, I continued as if she hadn't spoken, someone threw an egg at the window of the room where I'm sleeping. They left a note stuck to it. Old man thief, rot in prison. My God, Carol whispered. Sarah, why didn't you tell me? Because you've already sacrificed too much for me. I finally turned to face them. Carol, you sold your car. You spent your money on your dream trip. You're taking the bus in the Nashville heat at 54 because you believed in me. And for what? For nothing. We have no evidence. We have no case. We have nothing. We have the truth, Carol said firmly. The truth doesn't pay the bills. My voice rose. The truth doesn't give you back your savings. The truth doesn't give me my job back. Oh, did I forget to mention? The school officially fired me yesterday. 20 years of service, and they sent me a letter. They didn't even have the courage to call me. Helen and Carol exchanged worried looks. Sarah, you need to rest, Helen began. Rest? I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. How am I supposed to rest, Helen? My daughter hates me. My grandson thinks I'm a monster. My neighbors call me names on the street. I lost my job. I'm living with my best friend, whom I financially destroyed. And I'm going to prison anyway. 4 years or 15, it doesn't matter. My life is over. Don't say that. Carol stood up and came to me. Sarah, you can't give up. Why not? Hot tears streamed down my face. Give me a reason, Carol. A reason to keep fighting when I've already lost everything. Because you are innocent. And who cares? I shouted, making them both back away. Who cares if I'm innocent when I can't prove it? When Marcus Webb has an impeccable reputation and witnesses and doctors and a 40-year career? When Emma, my voice broke, when my own daughter would rather believe him than me? I collapsed to the floor right there, sobbing. Carol knelt beside me and hugged me, but even her comfort seemed useless now. What if Emma isn't involved? I whispered into her shoulder. What if she truly believes it was me? What if Marcus deceived her too? Then it's not just that I lost my daughter. It's that I failed so completely as a mother that she doesn't even consider the possibility that I'm innocent. You didn't fail. I failed, I snapped. I failed as a mother. I failed as a daughter. I let Marcus manipulate Dad right under my nose. I failed as a teacher. I got fired. I failed as a friend. I destroyed you financially. Sarah Morrison, you listen to me now. Carol cupped my face in her hands, forcing me to look at her. You didn't destroy anything. I choose to help you because you're my best friend and because I know you're innocent. Money comes back, cars can be bought. But a friend like you? That's priceless. But what if there's no way out? I asked, my voice small and broken. What if we really can't prove anything? What if I have to choose between confessing to something I didn't do and risking 15 years in prison? Helen came over and knelt beside us. Sarah, we're not there yet. There's still time. How long? I interrupted her. The preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. You said yourself the chances are slim, that Marcus is untouchable, that we don't have enough evidence. Helen didn't answer, and that silence said it all. That night, lying in the darkness of Carol's guest room, I stared at the ceiling and let doubt consume me completely. Maybe I deserved all of this. Maybe it was karma for something I did in another life, or divine punishment for sins I didn't even know I'd committed. Maybe Emma was right, and I really was a monster who took advantage of her father and blocked out her memories. Maybe it would be better to accept the deal. Confess, do my 4 years, get out at 56 and try to rebuild some kind of life from the rubble. At least that way Carol would get some of the money back when they sold my house to pay the restitution. At least that way it would all be over. Doubt was like molten lead in my chest, heavy and hot and suffocating. And for the first time since it all started, I seriously considered giving up. 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, I was in Carol's kitchen helping make breakfast when the doorbell rang. Carol frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. I walked to the door, still in my pajamas and robe, no longer caring about appearances. I looked through the peephole, and my heart stopped. Tyler, my 10-year-old grandson, was standing on the porch, alone, holding a backpack, looking nervously around. I opened the door so fast it hit the wall. Tyler! I fell to my knees in front of him. My God, what are you doing here? How did you— Grandma, he whispered, throwing his arms around me. He was shaking. I ran away. Mom can't know I'm here. I hugged him tightly, feeling his heart pound against my chest. Tyler, honey, you can't run away from home. Your mom must be desperate. She thinks I'm at Noah's, he said quickly. I said I was going to sleep there, but I took the bus here. Grandma, I needed to see you. I needed to give you this. He stepped back and opened his backpack with trembling hands. From inside, he took out a blue flash drive. What is this? I asked, confused. I found it, Tyler said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. In the attic of Great-Grandpa's house. Mom sent me there to get some boxes last week, and I saw a box hidden behind the others. It had your name on it, Grandma. For Sarah was written on the lid. My hands trembled as I picked up the flash drive. It was simple, cheap, the kind you could buy at any electronics store. There was more stuff in the box, Tyler continued. Letters, photos, and this flash drive with a sticky note that said, Important, watch if anything happens. Carol had appeared behind me. "Sarah, let's go inside. Tyler, you must be hungry." We all went into the living room. Carol went to make hot chocolate for Tyler while I stared at that flash drive like it was a grenade about to explode. "Did you watch what's in it?" I asked Tyler. He shook his head. "No, I thought I should bring it to you first. Grandma." His eyes filled with tears. "I know you didn't do what Mommy said. I know. You would never hurt Great-Grandpa. You loved him." "Oh, Tyler." I pulled him into another tight hug. "Do you believe me?" "I always believed," he whispered. "But Mom won't let me talk about you. She says mean things and gets mad when I ask when I can see you again. But I remember Grandma. I remember how you took care of Great-Grandpa, how loving you were, how you cried at the funeral." Carol returned with hot chocolate and cookies. "Tyler, honey, does your mom really know where you are?" He nodded. "Noah's covering for me. I told him I only needed a few hours." "Grandma." He looked at me with those green eyes that were so similar to Emma's as a child. "Please, see what's on the flash drive. I think Great-Grandpa left a message for you." With hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it, I carried the flash drive to Carol's laptop on the dining table. Tyler and Carol stood beside me as I plugged it in. A folder appeared. Inside were 5 video files labeled with dates. The first was from 6 months before Dad died. I clicked, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. The image appeared blurry at first, and then focused. And there he was, my father, Robert Chen, sitting in the armchair in his room, wearing that brown cardigan he loved. But it wasn't the dad of the last few months, confused, lost, scared. It was the dad from before, lucid, present, his eyes clear and aware. "Sarah," her voice came from the laptop, and I burst into tears instantly. "If you're watching this, something went wrong. Very wrong." Carol held my hand. Tyler pressed himself against my side. Dad continued. "Today is July 15th. I still have moments of clarity, thank God, and I need to capture this while I can, because I know time is running out." He looked directly into the camera, at me. "Sarah, my dear daughter, you have been my rock through these terrible years. I know the sacrifice you are making for me. I know you gave up your life, your dreams, everything to care for me." She was sobbing so loudly now that Carol had to turn up the volume. "That's why," Dad continued, "I've decided to transfer $220,000 from my savings into your account. It's yours, Sarah. You deserve every penny. It's payment for your care, your dedication, your love. It's not theft. It's not exploitation. It's recognition." My world stopped spinning. "I made the transfers personally," Dad said. "In the windows of lucidity I still have. Small amounts over the months, so as not to alarm the bank or your brothers. But it's all legal, all documented here in these videos. If anyone accuses you of stealing from me, show them. Show them it was my conscious decision, my gift to the daughter who gave up everything for me." Tears fell onto the laptop keyboard. Tyler was crying too. Carol had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. "And Sarah," Dad said, his voice cracking, "if something happens to the will, if someone tries to change my wishes after I'm gone, fight. Fight like I know you can. The real will, the one I made with Marcus in 2019, is the valid one. You deserve 60% of the inheritance. Your brothers will understand. And if they don't, that's their problem." He smiled, that gentle smile I had known since I was a child. "I love you, daughter, more than words can express. Thank you for giving me dignity in the end. Thank you for holding my hand when I was scared. Thank you for being you." The video has ended. The 3 of us sat in absolute silence for a long moment. So I clicked on the second video, and the third, and the fourth. Each one showed Dad, on different dates over those 6 months, explaining each transfer, showing the bank receipts, declaring his sanity, his love for me, his gratitude. The 5th video, recorded just 3 weeks before he died, showed Dad much weaker, his voice breaking, but still lucid. "Sarah, if Marcus Webb tries to change my will after I can no longer defend myself, he is lying. The 2019 will is final. Anything after that is false. Do not trust him. Fight, my daughter. Fight for the truth. The video has ended. Tyler hugged me tightly. I knew it, Grandma. I knew you didn't do anything wrong. Daddy, I whispered to the now black screen. Daddy, thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for protecting me, for loving me. Carol was on the phone. Helen, it's Carol. You need to come here immediately. We have the proof. We have everything. I looked at the blue flash drive in my hand. That small piece of plastic. That final gift from my father. My salvation. Helen arrived in 20 minutes. So fast she must have broken all speed limits. We watched all 5 videos together. When she finished, Helen was smiling. Really smiling for the first time since I'd met her. Sarah, she said, her eyes shining. We have our evidence. We have everything. Videotaped statements from a lucid man explaining his financial decisions. Proof that the transfers were authorized. Proof that he suspected Marcus. This changes everything. Can we use this in court? I asked, hardly daring to hope. We can and we will, Helen said with conviction. These videos completely prove your innocence. What's more, they incriminate Marcus Webb. If your father was lucid enough to record these videos and make these transfers knowingly, then he definitely was not lucid enough a week before he died to change his will. Hope, that fragile spark I thought had died, began to shine in my chest again. We will clear your name, Helen continued. We will prosecute Marcus for fraud, forgery, and exploitation, and we will recover your rightful inheritance. I looked at Tyler, who was smiling through his tears. You saved me, I whispered, pulling him into my lap, even though he was too big for it now. My brave little grandson saved me. I love you, Grandma, he said, and I'll make Mommy see the truth too. I promise. Carol hugged me from behind, and Helen put her hand on my shoulder, and Tyler was in my lap, and for the first time in months, I felt something I was sure I would never feel again. Hope. Real. Solid. Irrefutable. Dad had saved me. Even from the afterlife, he still protected me. Thank you, Dad, I whispered. Thank you for never giving up on me. And there, surrounded by the people who loved me, holding the proof of my innocence, I finally believed that everything was going to be okay. The truth had won, and justice was coming. The hearing was scheduled for a rainy Monday in June at the Davidson County Criminal Courthouse. I'd barely slept in the last 48 hours, mentally rehearsing every possible scenario, every word I might need to say. Carol lent me her only suit, navy blue, a little baggy in the shoulders, but respectable. Helen had insisted I look confident and maternal for the judge, as if clothes could change the fact that my entire life depended on what would happen that day. Tyler had returned home before Emma discovered he'd run away, but not before hugging me so tightly my bones creaked. It'll be okay, Grandma, he'd whispered. Great-Grandpa is watching over you from above. Now, sitting at the defense table next to Helen, watching the courtroom fill with people, I felt my stomach drop. The prosecutor, a woman in her 40s named Margaret Chen, stood on the other side with her stack of documents. Marcus Webb sat 3 rows back with his own attorney, his face carefully neutral. And then Emma walked in. My daughter. Wearing a conservative black dress, her hair tied back, no makeup. She saw me, and our eyes met for a second before she quickly looked away. But in that second, I saw something I hadn't expected to see. Doubt. Maybe even fear. All rise, the bailiff announced. Judge Harold Morrison's court is in session. The judge was a black man in his 60s with graying hair, reading glasses, and a stern but not cruel expression. He sat down, leafed through some papers, and then looked around the room. State of Tennessee versus Sarah Morrison, he said. Charges of exploitation of a vulnerable adult and embezzlement. How does the defendant plead? Helen and I stood. Not guilty, Your Honor, Helen said in a clear, firm voice. Very well. Ms. Chen, is the prosecution ready to present its evidence? Margaret Chen stood. Yes, Your Honor. However, Before we proceed, the defense has requested to present new evidence that has recently come to light. The prosecution does not object, given the extraordinary nature of the material. The judge looked at Helen. Mrs. Marks? Helen stood, and for the first time, I saw something I'd never seen in her. Real emotion. Passion. Your Honor, the defense wishes to introduce 5 videos recorded by the alleged victim, Mr. Robert Chen, in the 6 months prior to her death. These videos conclusively demonstrate that my client is not only innocent of the charges, but that she was the victim of an elaborate conspiracy to falsely frame her. A murmur ran through the room. Marcus Webb visibly tensed. Conspiracy? The judge raised an eyebrow. That's a serious allegation, Ms. Marks. And we have serious evidence, Your Honor. Helen nodded to her assistant, who began setting up the projection equipment. With the court's permission, we would like to play these videos now. Proceed. The lights went out. The large screen on the side of the room came on. And there was Dad. I heard Emma gasp behind me. Several people in the room murmured in surprise. Sarah. Dad's voice filled the silent courtroom. If you're watching this, something went wrong. Very wrong. For the next 40 minutes, we watched the 5 videos. Dad explained each transfer, showed bank receipts, declared his sanity, expressed his love for me, his gratitude for my care, and crucially, warned me about Marcus Webb. If Marcus tries to change my will after I can no longer defend myself, he's lying, Dad's voice echoed in the room in the final video. The 2019 will is final. Anything after that is false. When the lights came back up, I saw tears streaming down the faces of several people in the audience. Prosecutor Margaret Chen was pale. And Marcus Webb. Marcus was white as a sheet, sweating visibly. The judge took off his glasses and wiped the lenses, clearly trying to compose himself. Ms. Chen, does the prosecution wish to comment? Margaret Chen stood slowly. Your Honor, in light of this evidence, the prosecution requests a recess to reconsider the case. Denied, the judge said sharply. We've wasted enough time on this case. Ms. Marks, I assume you have more? Yes, Your Honor. Helen nodded, and her assistant handed out documents. The defense hired digital forensics experts who verified the authenticity of these videos. The dates and times are verifiable and have not been altered. Furthermore, we obtained Mr. Chen's medical records corresponding to these dates, confirming that he was in periods of relative lucidity when he made the recordings. She paused for effect. More importantly, Your Honor, our investigation uncovered something disturbing. We found a series of emails between attorney Marcus Webb and my client's daughter, Emma Harrison, in the months before and after Mr. Chen's death. Emma stood up suddenly. What? No, that's not... Miss Harrison, sit down, the judge ordered. Your Honor, may I introduce myself? Helen asked. Proceed. The screen lit up again, this time showing emails, messages between Marcus and Emma. My stomach churned as I read it. From Emma Harrison to Marcus Webb. Date, December 20th. Marcus, my mother is getting everything. The current will is ridiculous. 60% for her? She's already living rent-free in his house. There has to be something we can do. From Marcus Webb to Emma Harrison. Date, December 22nd. Emma, as we discussed, there are legal options. Your father is in rapid decline. If he had a moment of lucidity and changed his mind about the distribution, well, that would be his decision. From Emma Harrison to Marcus Webb. Date, January 3rd. Can you really do that? What about Sarah? She'll argue. From Marcus Webb to Emma Harrison. Date, January 5th. Leave Sarah to me. With her history of having full access to his accounts, and with some strategic irregularities in the transfers, I can guarantee she'll be too busy defending herself to challenge the will. As for your share, as we discussed, 30% of the difference is a fair price for my services. The room erupted in murmurs. Emma stood crying, shaking her head. No, it wasn't like that. He told me it was cool, that Daddy wanted this. Silence. The judge banged his gavel. Miss Harrison, one more outburst and I'll have you removed from the courtroom. Marcus Webb was standing now too, his lawyer trying to pull him back into his chair. "Your Honor, these emails are out of context." "Mr. Webb, sit down," the judge ordered coldly. "Mrs. Marks, continue." Helen was relentless. "Your Honor, these emails demonstrate a clear conspiracy to forge the will, falsely incriminate my client, and wrongfully divide the estate. Marcus Webb not only forged a will in the name of a dying man, but deliberately planted evidence to make it appear as if Sarah Morrison had committed a crime." "And how exactly did he do it?" the judge asked. "The transfers, Your Honor." Helen brought out more documents. "Our forensic accountant discovered something interesting. Although the transfers appeared to come from Mr. Chen's account to Ms. Morrison's account using her login, further analysis revealed that the IP addresses were inconsistent." "Explain in terms an ordinary person would understand, Mrs. Marks." "Some of the transfers were made from Ms. Morrison's computer. Yes, those were legitimate, authorized by Mr. Chen, as we saw in the videos. But other transfers, the more suspicious ones and in irregular amounts, were made from a different computer. A computer whose IP we traced back to Marcus Webb's office. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Marcus Webb, Helen continued, her voice rising, used the login credentials he had as Mr. Chen's attorney to make additional transfers from his account to Sarah's, creating a pattern that would appear criminal. He then altered the will to remove the legitimate explanation for these transfers, making Sarah look like a thief." Marcus Webb slumped into his chair, face buried in his hands. Prosecutor Margaret Chen stood, looking physically ill. "Your Honor, in light of these revelations, the prosecution immediately drops all charges against Sarah Morrison and requests a criminal investigation against Marcus Webb for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy." "Request granted," the judge said, looking at Marcus with disgust. "Officers, take Mr. Webb into custody." Everything happened so fast after that. 2 officers walked up to Marcus, who was now crying, mumbling, I'm sorry," over and over. They handcuffed him right there in the courtroom. "I didn't mean to. Emma told me Sarah was stealing. I just wanted to help. The money. I needed the money. My daughter is sick. The medical bills." He was completely breaking down. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry." "Take him away," the judge ordered in disgust. Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Morrison, please stand up." I stood up on shaky legs. Helen grabbed my elbow, steadying me. "Mrs. Morrison," the judge said, his voice softening considerably, "on behalf of the state of Tennessee, I apologize for the terrible injustice you have suffered. The charges against you are hereby dismissed with prejudice, meaning they cannot be refiled. You are completely cleared of all charges." "Free," I repeated, the word making no sense in my brain. "You are not guilty, Mrs. Morrison," the judge said more clearly. "Completely and totally innocent. Furthermore, I rule that the 2019 will is the valid legal document, invalidating any subsequent changes. The distribution of the estate will proceed as Mr. Chen originally designated." My legs gave out. They simply collapsed beneath me. Helen caught me, keeping me upright. "Innocent," I whispered, and then louder, "Innocent." Carol ran from the audience and hugged me, both of us crying, laughing, holding each other. "You did it," Carol cried. "You're free, darling. Free." The court was declared closed. People began to leave, murmuring, looking at me with new eyes, no longer as a criminal, but as a victim, as an innocent. Helen pulled me into a hug, a completely professional one. "Sarah, you were so strong, so incredibly strong. I couldn't have done it without you," I managed to say. "Without you and Carol. You saved my life." Margaret Chen, the prosecutor, approached cautiously. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm so sorry. If we had known—" "You should have investigated better from the start," Helen said coldly, still protecting me. "You're right," Margaret admitted. "We failed you, Mrs. Morrison. I'm sorry." I nodded, speechless, and then I heard a sob behind me. "Mother." I turned around slowly. Emma stood there, face destroyed, makeup smeared, trembling, and for the first time in months, Our eyes truly met. "Mom," Emma repeated, taking a hesitant step towards me. I didn't move. I just stared at her, this woman who was my daughter, but who had also conspired to destroy me. "Sarah, you don't need to talk to her right now," Helen murmured beside me. But I needed to. I needed to hear. I needed to understand. "Say it." My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Say what you have to say, Emma." She broke down, literally collapsed onto the floor of the courtroom hallway, falling to her knees, sobbing so violently that her entire body convulsed. "What have I done?" she screamed. "My God, Mom, what have I done?" People stopped to stare. Court officials watched warily. But I just stood there, staring at my daughter broken on the ground. "Marcus told me," Emma sobbed between words, "he told me you were manipulating Grandpa, that you were stealing from him. He showed me transfers, statements. He said we needed to protect Grandpa's assets before you took them all." "And you believed," I said, my voice dead. "I'm an idiot." She slammed her hands on the marble floor. "He said the new will was what Grandpa really wanted, that Grandpa had realized you were taking advantage, that he'd changed his mind about leaving you so. And I, God forgive me, I believed it because I wanted to believe it. Because you wanted the money," I finished for her. "Yes!" Emma screamed, tears and snot streaming down her face. "Yes, I did. Derek and I are drowning in debt. The house, his car, the credit cards. And when Marcus said I could get a bigger share if the will changed, I let greed blind me." She crawled to my feet, grabbing the hem of my pants. "But I swear, Mom, I swear I didn't know he was faking it. I didn't know he was making up fake transfers. I thought they were real. I thought you were actually stealing." "So you turned me into the police," he said, still emotionless in his voice. "Because I was furious. Because I thought you betrayed Grandpa, betrayed our family." She was clinging to me now, crumpling Carol's suit. "But I was wrong. So terribly, horribly wrong, and I almost destroyed you. I almost put my own mother in prison for 20 years. "Almost got it," I agreed. "Mom, please." Emma looked up at me, and I saw the little girl she once was, the child I'd rocked, fed, protected. "Please forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. I know I'm the worst daughter in the world, but please—" "Where's Tyler?" I asked suddenly. Emma blinked, confused by the change of subject. He's at school." "Why?" "Because you'll lose custody of him." She paled. "What?" Helen stepped forward. "Emma Harrison, you are being investigated for conspiracy to commit fraud. Even though you claim you were unaware of the extent of Marcus's actions, your emails demonstrate active participation in the scheme. The prosecution is deciding whether to file criminal charges against you." "No," Emma whispered. "No, I can't lose my son. Tyler is all I have." "You should have thought of that before you destroyed his grandmother," Helen said coldly. Emma looked at me, panic in her eyes. "Mom, don't let them take Tyler from me, please. I've done terrible things, but he's innocent. He needs his mom. He needs a family that won't try to destroy each other for money," he said. Carol gently touched my arm. "Sarah." I looked at Carol, then at Helen, then back at Emma collapsed on the floor. My daughter. My blood. The child I carried for 9 months, the one I breastfed, the one I raised alone when her father abandoned us, but also the woman who called me a thief in front of all the neighbors, who visited me in prison just to spit venom, who changed the locks on my own house, who took Tyler from me. I slowly knelt in front of her. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. "Emma Marie Harrison," he said firmly. "You almost killed me. Not physically, but in every other way. You destroyed my reputation, my job, my home, my sanity. You made me doubt myself. You made me sit in a prison cell thinking I was going crazy." "I know," she sobbed. "I know, Mom." "Let me finish." My voice echoed in the hallway. "You did all this for greed, for money. You sold your own mother, the woman who gave up everything for you, for the promise of a greater inheritance. I'm very sorry. And you know what the saddest part is? My voice finally broke. It's that during all those years caring for your grandfather, every time I was exhausted, broken, wondering why I kept going, I thought of you. I thought, I'm doing this for the family, for Emma, so she can be proud of the mother she had. And in the end, you were ashamed of me. No, Emma screamed. I wasn't ashamed. I was confused, mistaken. You were greedy, I cut in, and greed turned you into someone I don't recognize. I released her face and stood up. She remained kneeling, looking up with desperate hope. Helen, he said, without taking his eyes off Emma, what is her legal status? The prosecution is looking into it, Helen replied. Given her involvement in the emails and the fact that she benefited from the scheme, she will likely face charges. At a minimum, conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly 3 to 5 years in prison. Emma collapsed again, groaning. And Tyler? I asked. Given that Emma could be convicted and that his father, Derek, often works out of state, custody would probably go to the closest available relative. Helen looked at me meaningfully. Which would be you, Sarah, as maternal grandmother. Tyler, my grandson, living with me, being raised by me. The irony was almost poetic. Emma tried to take me away from him, and in the end, she handed him to me herself. I looked at my daughter, destroyed on the floor, and felt, I don't know what I felt. Anger, yes. Sadness, definitely. But also something more complex. Pity, perhaps. Or maybe just profound emotional exhaustion. Get up, Emma, he said finally. She obeyed, staggering, leaning against the wall. You will face consequences, he said clearly. Legal and personal. Dad's original will has been restored, which means you lose your entire share of the inheritance. For conspiring with Marcus, you are disinherited. The 33% that would have gone to you will be divided between me and my siblings. Emma nodded, swallowing hard. You'll probably go to prison. I don't know for how long, but you will. I paused. And you'll learn what I learned in my cell, that freedom is a gift we don't appreciate until we lose it. I deserve it, she whispered. Yes, he does. I took a deep breath. But Tyler doesn't deserve to lose both his grandmothers and his mother. Emma looked up, a spark of hope. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to take a deal with the prosecution. You're going to confess your part in this. You're going to plead guilty and accept the sentence, probably 3 years with the possibility of parole in 2 if you behave. Sarah, you don't have to... Helen began. Let me finish, Helen. I looked back at Emma. While you're serving your sentence, Tyler will live with me. I will raise him, educate him, give him the stability he deserves. Thank you, Mom. I'm not done. My voice was sharp as a blade. Tyler will live with me, and I'll take him to visit you in prison once a month. Not because you deserve it, but because he needs to know that his mother, despite all the terrible mistakes she's made, is still loved by someone. Because I won't let him grow up with the hatred you instilled in me. Tears streamed down Emma's face, silent now. And when you get out, I continued, you'll work for me. You'll live in a small house I'll buy for you. Nothing fancy, just functional. And you'll spend every day of the next 10 years proving that you've learned the value of family over money. That you've learned integrity. That you've learned to be the mother Tyler deserves. I will, Emma promised. I swear, Mom, I'll spend the rest of my life proving... Don't make me promises, I snapped. Just do the deeds. Deeds, Emma. Not words. You destroyed me with words. Now you're going to rebuild me with actions. I turned to Helen. Arrange the deal with the DA. Make sure Emma has adequate legal representation. I'll pay for it. And start the process for temporary custody of Tyler. Helen nodded, making notes. And Marcus? I asked. Marcus Webb, Helen said with satisfaction, will face at least 5 years in federal prison for fraud, forgery, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Possibly more. And he'll lose his law license, of course. His career is over. Justice, finally. I turned back to Emma. You have one chance, daughter. One chance to make things right. to be the mother Tyler needs, to be the daughter I raised you to be. Don't waste it." "I won't," she whispered. "I promise. No, not promises. I will do it, Mom. I'll prove it to you." I nodded. Then, because she was still my daughter, because I still remembered the child she had been before greed corrupted her, I opened my arms. Emma practically fell into them, sobbing against my shoulder. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she repeated like a mantra. "I love you, Mom. I love you so much. How could I do this to you?" "Because you forgot what really matters," I whispered into her hair. "But now you'll learn again." Carol was crying beside Helen, who was discreetly wiping her own eyes. I gently pushed Emma away. "Now go. Pick up Tyler from school and bring him to Carol's house. You're going to tell him the truth, all of it. That he made terrible mistakes, that he'll have to go away for a while, but that Grandma will take care of him. And Emma? Yes? Tell him that great-grandfather Robert gave us the greatest gift of all, the truth, and that the truth always, always wins in the end." Emma nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hands. "I will. Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me, for being a better person than I deserve. I'm not doing this for you," I said honestly. "I'm doing it for Tyler, and for me. Because Dad taught me that family means not giving up, even when it hurts." Emma stumbled away, and I leaned against the wall, finally letting it all hit me. "It's over," I whispered. "It's really over." Carol hugged me tightly. "You're the strongest person I know, Sarah Morrison." "I'm not strong," I muttered. "I'm exhausted." "Strong and exhausted can coexist," Helen said, putting away the documents. "Sarah, in the next few days we'll organize everything. Tyler's custody, Emma's settlement, the estate settlement. You'll get back everything you lost. Your home, your reputation, your life. Except my job," he said with a bitter laugh. "The school won't hire me back." "Then we sue them for wrongful termination," Helen said pragmatically. "Or you use part of the inheritance to do something else. Travel, write, whatever makes you happy." Happy. I hadn't thought of that word in months. "First," he said, squaring his shoulders, "I'll get my grandson. I'll take him home, Carol's house for now. I'll prepare his favorite room, and I'll start rebuilding the life Marcus and Emma nearly destroyed." "And then?" Carol asked softly. "Then," I smiled for the first time in months, "I'll live, really live, not just survive. Dad gave me this second chance. I'm not going to waste it."